everyone, and welcome to Contemporary Art Taos 2020, the Artist Interview Series. This series consists of short live interviews that will take place twice a month for the duration of this exhibition, featuring all 24 of our exhibiting artists. I'm Nicole, Curator of Exhibitions and Collections here at the Harvard Museum of Art, and joining us for the third installment of this series is our artist, Anita Rodriguez. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you for inviting me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good. So my first question for today, one of the things that strikes everyone about your artwork first, one of the many things, is your use of these vibrant color palettes. Can you talk to us about your relationship with color and why you choose such luminous pigmentation?
Well, it's kind of like asking someone, how come you love chocolates? You know, it's like, they're just beautiful. You know, the colors are vibrant and full of life, and I love them. Sometimes I squeeze pure paint right onto the canvas, right out of the tube, and mix it on the canvas. You know, and people always say that. They love the colors.
And I'm so grateful we were actually able to incorporate some of that color into the wall here at the Harwood, thinking about some of the traditional Hispanic homes in the area and the bright walls that would be painted around some of the murals and things. And everyone who's come into the space always comments on our big pink wall we created for you. So I'm glad it's part of it. Talk to us about the subject matter in these two different works we have here.
Okay, well, this one I called Los Antepasados, which means the ancestors. And, excuse me, this could be Day of the Dead. When the dead came back to celebrate a feast in a house that they had lived in before. And we see that they are wearing, they're crypto Jews. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about the history of New Mexico that fascinates me is our incredible diversity. And the story of the crypto Jews fascinated me because it amazed me that people could live in these tiny little villages where everybody knows everything and practice their religion for generations in secret, which will give you an idea of how people cling to their cultures and their beliefs. They will die for them. So that, and then, you know, just the delight of using the colors of the Mexican sunset.
Can you explain the crypto Jews a little bit? I know I've read about it in your work, but some of our watchers may not know the history of crypto Jews in New Mexico.
Well, when Columbus sailed, the year that he sailed was the year that Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain expelled all the Jews and all the Muslims from Spain. And so a lot of families of Jews who were then given no other choice, they were either to die or convert, moved to New Mexico and changed their identity and moved into these villages all over the Americas, actually, are peppered with Jews who fled during the Inquisition and moved here to New Mexico. And I think it was in the 50s, a man named Stanley Cordes wrote a book called Ends of the Earth. When he was a New Mexico state historian, and for the first time he brought the story out and everybody's, oh God, you're lying, it can't be true. But then little by little, it began coming out. And there are families here in Taos who now claim Jewish ancestry. So it's one of the many threads in our magnificent weaving of diversity.
Absolutely, and one that I don't think is always told as part of the first history look at Taos. So.
Oh, you know, it's so complex and so deep. I mean, it takes a long time to learn about this town.
Definitely.
You need a bibliography.
And what about this work above you?
This one I called Mestizaje. And if you look at the outside, this could be anywhere in the Americas on a weekend, the day when people bring the native people bring their things into town to sell on the day of the mercado. Here's the church. There they are selling their wares, you know, their pottery. The door pulls on the nichos are always semi-precious stones. These are lapis lazuli. And then you open it up, and suddenly you're 500 years in the past. And this is the same building, the same foundations, because you remember the churches were built on the footings, on the foundations of the indigenous temples. And so here's the indigenous temple, but the people are still there. They're still wearing their traditional clothes. They're still coming on market day and bringing their tools. So this is about another painting about the diversity of northern New Mexico, because we're mixed. We're really mixed.
I love that both of these works have that message of timelessness. It sort of exists in the past and in the future simultaneously. And the subject matter being skeletons sort of reiterates that. There's not really a beginning and an end. It's sort of
That's right, that's true. That's true. And I like the skeletons because they're so quintessentially democratic. You can't tell if they're male or female or rich or poor. All you know is they're human.
Absolutely, and that certainly speaks to that multiculturalism also,
Right,
down
right.
to our essence, we're bones. How do you dialogue, I think you've already started to answer this, but how do you dialogue with your own cultural heritage within your work?
Well, I paint my culture. I paint the legends and the stories of my culture. I document my culture. I explore my culture. And I do this through my paintings and through my writing. And I'm very fortunate in that I have a really deep, vivid, colorful, profound, and rich culture. And I will never live long enough to finish with this buffet that I am blessed with.
It's great. As you mentioned, you're also a writer. How does your writing affect the narratives of your paintings and vice versa? Is there a relationship between the two?
Well, yes. I paint in Spanish and I write in English, but it's the same narrative. And sometimes I will write a story about a painting, or painting will inspire a story. So they really do inform each other. The paintings are all, there's a story to every painting. And my writing is really visual. I deliberately try in my writing to bring in sensation, to make the reader feel and see and be present visually.
So in your life outside of this, and also integrated into this, you are a civil rights and social justice activist in many ways.
That's right.
Do you intend for any of those messages to come across in your work, in these and in other works that you create?
Yes, I have works that are very specifically political, and yes, I never keep it out. Life is political.
Life is political.
I can't get away from it.
You also, in your many different skill sets, you were just telling me that you are an enjarradora, a builder, a finisher, a tradition that's both Hispanic and Pueblo, that's been passed down amongst women. Can you talk to us about that tradition and how you're involved?
Well, it just so happens that women kept 1,000 years of architecture standing in northern New Mexico. This initially began as a Native American process because it is the women in the Pueblos who plaster the entire village every year. And when the Spanish came, they adopted the custom out of necessity. But not only that, in all earth-building cultures, and when I was born, 80% of the world lived in houses that were built of dirt. In all earth-building cultures, women always do the lighter work, the finishing and the embellishment, because we like to have everything nice. We like to have it repaired, we like our colors, and we like to fix things up. So women do this in all cultures. And it was passed on in New Mexico by oral tradition, as I say, in both Hispanic and Native culture. And the enjaradoras did very specific work. We were the plasterers. We covered the entire surface of the architecture, exterior and interior. We were responsible for all the maintenance. We were also the fireplace builders. And we were also those who did the alisando, which is the process of painting the walls with colored earths. So I took out a license in the late 50s and became the only licensed woman and the first licensed enjarradora. And I practiced for 25 years until I was 47, and then I got too old to pick up my 500-pound mixer and get it on the trailer hitch, so I changed my profession and became a painter.
I still think there is some architectural influence in here, in the structure of your frames and in the building of your nichos that it to me very much feels like that architectural manifestation.
You're very perceptive. That's true. I mean, it's got doors.
It does have
doors, and the carpentry part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I make a lot of my own frames, and make my own nichos. So the tools and the whole idea of building, yes, it's incorporated into the art.
What is your relationship to the unique New Mexico history of devotional art, or Santos?
The Santos, from 1847, my people lost about 80% of our land. We were an agricultural people, and so that just about destroyed our culture. And our most sacred art are the Santos. And they belong to me, even though I am not related by blood to a penitente family, even though I'm not even a good Catholic. They are an expression of my culture. And a really devout penitente would object to my calling them art, because they are more than art. They have absorbed the prayers and the tears of generations. But they are some of the greatest art in the United States, and most of them were stolen. I know the names of men who broke down the doors of our moradas and took the Santos and came back the next day for the doors. And they are now in private collections and in museums, where they cannot be used, where they cannot be carried out into the fields to bless the crops, where they cannot witness our weddings or baptize our children. So I feel very deeply about the Santos.
Do you feel like your work, I know the Santos were often considered this intermediary between the terrestrial world and what's happening in the heavens. Do you ever think of your work in that way, as an intermediary, or as a communicator between two worlds?
I think all art is. Mm-hmm. I think that's what art is. It's the bridge, without which we will become hopelessly insane. So buy art.
All right, I have a fun question for you next. When researching you, I found out that you also do tarot card readings. I'm curious to know about that practice. How did you get into that? Are you frequently doing readings?
Well, I lived in Mexico for 15 years, and every year I had to renew my papers. And so every year I had to drive down to Leon, Guanajuato, and go to immigration and get my papers. And in the meantime, Mexicans were tossing the desert and dying, but I just could get a visa and hop on a plane and go down there. So, they gave Americans a hard time. Americans who were oblivious of their privilege, all they needed to do was have enough money to buy a plane ticket and they could get a visa. So every time I went, they'd say, "No, senora, you need another paper." So I'd have to drive back. And finally, I was so disgusted. I had been there 5 times. I thought, "Oh boy, I'm really paying for the sins of my country." And I looked across the street and it said, "Tarot." And I thought, maybe they'll tell me if I can get my immigration papers. So I walked into this taller that was filled with all of this occult stuff. And this really interesting person that I couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman looked at me and said, for only $1,000, I can teach you, I can tell you've got the gift. Well, I got her down to trading and painting. And I stayed with her for 9 months, and she had a huge business. We would read for about 200 people a day. And she was a santera, and she wanted to initiate me, but all I wanted to do was learn how to read the cards. So whenever she had clients that they were going to do santera business, I had to go out and sit on a bench in front of the taller because they were not supposed to see it. But I read cards in Mexico. And in Mexico, all classes resort to the enjarradora, to the curanderas and the card readings. The lower classes, the poor people go right off the bat. The rich people go as a last resort. So I got a window into Mexico that was so deep and profound that all my reading and interrogation of taxi drivers and my friends could not yield the information that I got about Mexico from reading the cards. And yes, I read the cards. I read the cards for lots of different kinds of people. I read in both languages. I read for Native Americans. I read for intellectuals and academics. Therapists send me their clients. And I read for curanderos who call me all the way from Peru and Mexico to get a card read.
Oh, amazing. Well, I may have to hit you up for that
Absolutely.
sometime.
Absolutely.
I think we have time for one more question. So this exhibition was limited to artists from Taos or with deep connections to Taos. So can you tell us about your personal relationship with Taos?
My family has been here for 300 years. That's deep. I'm a real Taoseña. And I'm related to, I don't know, I'm related to him.
It's Francis, our videographer.
Yeah, he's a Santos, I'm a Trujillo, we figured it out. No, my relationship to this, it's not that I love this land. It's that this land owns me. I belong to this land. I love this land. This is my home and my ancestors' home. My ancestors are buried here. I have 300 years of bones in this town. So my roots here.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Anita, for being with us. Stay tuned for the next installment of this series on September 30th with Dean Pulver right here on Facebook Live. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.